It takes 3 tries for my eyes to obey. The lids feel welded shut, muscles glued in place by some invisible resin. On the 3rd effort, a crack of sight opens and white light knifes through. A ceiling swims into focus. Pale panels mapped with hairline fissures, recessed lights set like coins in plaster. They buzz, too high to hear, too present to ignore, thin needles of sound that stitch into the ache behind my temples. My hands refuse me, my feet too. When I test the body I'm supposed to own, leather bites down and metal answers. Wrists belted to a slab, ankles cinched hard. Tubes tether both forearms to machines that blink and breathe in slow, proprietary rhythms. Air scrapes the throat raw, tasting of scorch and solvent, a sweetness turned harsh. Hospitals smell clean and apologetic. This place fumes. I try to turn my head, and the strap across my brow scuffs hair and skin. The effort threads sparks through the skull, a dull throb gathering into steady percussion. I force a breath through a throat lined with grit and manage a sound that embarrasses me. Something between a cough and a broken hinge. Subject KV72 responsive. Begin cognitive assessment. The voice is close and far at once, amplified through glass. I roll my eyes toward it. Beyond a clear partition, 2 figures hang in the haze, lab coats sharpening their silhouettes. A woman with blade-straight posture, a man with the kind of stillness that passes for authority. Their faces smear when they move. The glass throws a sheen across their features that makes them anonymized and perfect. She writes with neat fury. He raises a hand held and watches me the way you watch a gauge. Vitals within expected parameters, she says, as if I'm a math problem that arrived at the correct sign. Increased activity in the prefrontal cortex. Likely regaining higher cognition. Verbal? The man asks. The device in his hand blinks. His attention is on numbers, not on me. I pull a word up from someplace with dust on the door. What? The rest shreds in the throat, exits as a rusted rasp. Their glance is the first human exchange I see between them. Vocal cords traumatized during the process, she answers, already moving back to the clipboard. Irrelevant for now. Process. The word arrives without context and lands heavy. The straps keep my hands from climbing toward the tubes from climbing toward my throat. Memory latches, slips, catches again. Flash wash of sky gone smoke gray, dirt and impact. Artillery that turns distance into math. My squad's voices pitched high to carry across a bad field. We were on Tor's surface. Tor, not Tory, I remember now. The briefings insisted on the hard consonant. The campaign was supposed to be a clearing action, then a rotation home. Instead, the recollection breaks like surf on rock, and the afterwash leaves nothing but a cold hollow. Panic starts at the edges and walks in. It arrives polite, then finds the door to frenzy and throws it open. I pull against the restraints again, harder, not because I expect them to fail, but because movement feels like the only friendly thing left. Leather grinds into skin. The slab complains, a small creak that sounds like hope. Nothing gives. A heat builds low and mean beneath the sternum. First a feverish bloom, then a pressure that suggests there's a second chest inside the first, and it's inflating. The recessed lights sharpen until they are points with halos. The machine's hum grows teeth. The air itself vibrates, an invisible instrument tightening its strings. The change registers as both pain and impossibly capacity, like a muscle you didn't know you had and aren't sure you want. Something in me clicks. The strap at my right wrist doesn't merely break. My arm is simply somewhere else, and leather dangles from the cuff like a shed skin. The next 3 restraints go the same way, an unlearning of limits. I sit up too fast and the room slips, tilts, then resolves. The tubes lift with me, one tugs and slides free with a wet sting, another tears and sprays a fine arc that smells of coolant and copper. Feet hit cold floor, knees bend. Balance returns so cleanly it feels like theft. A reflective panel on the console opposite offers a cruel little mirror. I don't want it. It insists. The eyes that look back are wrong. Irises are washed, predatory yellow, the pupils contracted to needles that flex and recenter on the light. Under the skin, thin traceries of metal, no, not sitting on the surface, threaded through it, pulse with a low light, silver like moonlit wire. My hands are a size and shape I recognize only in outline. The fingers end in blackened crescents of keratin, hard enough to scratch glass without pressure. The geometry of the face is mine until it isn't. Angles tuned slightly sharper, the planes of cheek and jaw overdefined, the human softness edged away. I don't have time to decide whether to scream. The door exhales. Boots hammer. Someone barks a code. Instinct takes the wheel from thought and spins hard. I move, not the blurry, overstrong thrashing of panic, but a concise, efficient series of adjustments that feel already learned. The first guard enters far ahead of his weapon. My shoulder finds the meat just under his ribs and lifts. He departs my space as if thrown by a magnet's rejection, hits metal, slides. The rifle clatters. My hand closes on it before I've named the intention. The gun is familiar the way your own handwriting is familiar. My grip lands where it belongs. My finger measures the trigger like an old friend. The second guard tries to bring his muzzle up. I put rounds through the corridor and he folds. Sound blossoms into alarms. Red bleeds into the ceiling strips and washes the room a color I've learned to hate. The lab coats become ghosts in their glass. The woman's mouth moves around a word that might be protocol. The man speaks into his device. Neither of them tries to help me or stop me. I back toward the corridor, and the corridor rises to meet me. The map of this place unspools inside the head like a path I've already walked. Turn left at the implants line, right at the sealed storage with the rippled door, a service spine that runs along a stack of environmental units and smells like neglect. A locked bulkhead halts me. The keypad chirps for a code I don't own. Pressure spikes behind the sternum again, urgent now. I put my fist into the metal beside the panel. The impact lands like a verdict. The wall dents around my knuckles, and the locking bolts spit static and die. The door unlatches enough to wedge my fingers into the seam. The fingers are strong and too calm. The door decides it would rather be open. Inside, frost blue light from a nest of consoles and hollow sheets gives everything a submarine cast. Data crawls, chemical strings, procurement manifests, delivery timetables. One name repeats in a way that feels less like a label and more like a signature. Oris Zeth. The other entries assemble around it. Budget lines, experiment numbers, reduction notes, like planets around a star. I pull a drive from a slot with a soft, final click. Pocket it. Leave. The corridor bends toward a lift alcove. Bad choice. Lifts invite converging fire. I take the stairs by halves, shoulders brushing pipes, alarms dimming into a continuous animal wail. The last door before the world is marked with the kind of signage that thinks it can scare. Hazard/environ/authorized personnel only. I shoulder through. Stale, heavy air collapses over me like an old blanket. The facility's mouth opens onto the depths, a city's forgotten strata, where infrastructure stacks on failure and failure grows a roof. The ceiling is low enough to make the horizon a rumor. Conduit snakes along concrete. Water, the color of bruises, collects where the floor sags. The hum of the world above translates into a constant migraine. I move until I find a seam of shadow that doesn't invite company. A wedge between an elevator's concrete housing and the back of a gutted maintenance kiosk. The body remembers to shake now that it's allowed to. I let it. Breath in, hold out. The glow under the skin fades to a tolerable whisper. The claws remember to be nails again. It would be easy, tempting, to sink and let the darkness close. Instead, I inventory the drive, the name, the changed body, the lack of a plan wider than the next minute. The memory of Tor's surface returns as a fragment and sits stubbornly in the same place. Smoke, the specific low scream of incoming, a man in my squad yelling position numbers, my own laugh, too bright. Then the world goes white, and a floor that shouldn't be there catches me. Everything later is fluorescent and cold. I need a place that will run without credentials. The depths oblige. 2 levels down, a drop through a service hatch, a crawl that peels concrete dust into hair and mouth. I find a maintenance station that's been left to die in place. Half the lights are out. The consoles are too old to talk to the spire, which is exactly why they'll talk to me. I decouple a power cable from a dead air scrubber, strip the insulation, and teach the station to pretend it woke naturally. It coughs into life. The drive doesn't like the port doesn't like the drive. I hold my breath and push the idea of compliance across the tiny space between them. Work because I say so. The station blinks a sulky welcome and begins to read. I don't move while it thinks. Any motion brings the metal-threaded ache back to a shout. The body complains. I ration attention. Up on the surface, a tram howls through a bad bearing. Somewhere back in the facility, a siren dies to a whisper and rallies. People in the midline will hear nothing but a headline later. Minor incident, containment achieved. The console spits characters at a pace like rain on sheet metal. Chaff, chaff, chaff. Then something with weight. Internal procurement facility P. Then a redacted block that doesn't fully read. Facility P. A burn mark in my head lights up. The letters snap to location. The place they kept the ones who needed to be convenient and gone. Another block gives me shipping schedules, then personnel lists, then a name that opens a whole room of old anger without resistance. General Hadrian Volan. The dossiers love him. The file language slicks him in praise. Decorated, decisive, visionary. Another layer removes the varnish. The man who sent my squad into a mouth and never asked what chewed. The man who signed off on transfers to Zeth with a note about material readiness. His signature repeats in the purchase of expertise and the disposal of bodies, and the letters grow uglier each time I see them. The console has no good reason to carry private security schedules for a man like Volan. It carries them anyway because everything in this city is connected when you can pay enough to build the bridges. His estate sits in the midline, near a canal that used to be about water and is now about smell. There's a map with patrol routes and camera arcs. I study it until the angles live behind my eyes, not because I need vengeance, though I do, but because the cleanest line to Zeth runs through the man who resourced him and didn't bother to remember he'd sent me. The body wants sleep. Sleep in the depths is an invitation you don't live to regret. I move. The tunnels that feed the midline are too narrow for comfort and too generous with their inhabitants. But they are also familiar in the way every neglected place is familiar. Things fall apart in the same ways. I pick a path by smell and air movement. Twice a slab of old concrete drops close enough to brush my shoulder. Once something with too many legs skitters across my hand and is gone. The claws remain. My breath fogs the beam of my stolen penlight. When the hatch opens into the midline, the first breath tastes wrong the way expensive bottled water tastes wrong. Processed, intentioned. The streets here were a different kind of grime, patterned and decorative. Drones drift like lazy fish under a manufactured dawn that runs on schedules, not sun. A propaganda loop on a hollow banner murmurs about safety and stewardship, splicing images of the spire's clean ribs with footage of smiling workers who did not smile during the shoot. The cloak I steal in the depths reads as fabric up here if I keep my head down and my steps sure. The glow under the skin dims enough to pass as fashion. Eyes slide off the slit pupils if I don't let them catch light. People in the midline have trained themselves not to notice anything that might require a decision. Volan's wall is good enough for neighbors, not good enough for me. The canal at his back stinks sweetly of rot and chemical. Over it, a trellis brags about ivy that wouldn't live here without money. I weigh the risk of drones against the certainty of a gate. The trellis wins by being indifferent. Hands find purchase, lay pressure. The new geometry of my forearms makes the climb ridiculous. I am over and on to landscape quiet before a patrol rounds the corner. The garden is the kind of unnatural that offends even without history. Grass that glows health, flowers bred for symmetry, air filters that whisper like attentive servants. The back of the house is glass. It was meant to magnify wealth. It functions now as a lens. I can see Volan before he sees me. A man who has practiced exactly this posture, in exactly this chair, with exactly that drink. Blue glass glows in a cabinet behind him. His reflection tints the window, warps his jaw into a fish's grim line. He swallows and considers. Men in his position always consider. A service door surrenders to fingers and a quiet pressure against the latch. Inside, the house smells like chill and citrus, expensive cleaning solvents and captured air. The marble under my feet holds a cold like stored night. I walk, knowing where the cameras are without looking, and keep my head angled so the glass has to work harder. He doesn't notice me until I choose to be noticed. I stand behind his shoulder with the careful distance of a custodian. "General Volan," I say. The voice comes out low and damaged. He turns as if through syrup. The glass hesitates mid-air. When he sees me, his face does a quick inventory of options and discards most of them. "They told me some of the experiments got out," he says after a beat, "that lets him dress fear in wryness. I didn't expect, well, here we are. Why?" My throat resists the word. It still arrives with enough weight to bow the air. Why send us to Tor to die? Why hand the survivors to Zeth? Why me? He smiles a smile he learned in an academy. "You think I remembered your name?" he asks. "You were a squad number on a grid. A pawn in a game that stays too big for your sake to understand. The anger is not a surge. It is a narrowing, a carving down to an edge. I take his collar and lift because I can, and because some part of me still needs the verification that he weighs less than the idea of him. The body loves the act with an uncomplicated joy that scares me. Another part, the one that counts exits and needs answers, holds my hand from closing completely. Every name, I say, every schedule, who paid whom, where Zeth keeps the ones who didn't fail, where he runs the tests that won't make it into your reports. He laughs too quickly. The sound spills and leaves him smaller. It won't help you, he says. Whatever you think you're stopping, it's in motion. Zeth's just the knife. You kill the knife, you don't stop the hand. The alarms arrive as if on cue, beginning as a distant tremor, then swallowing the room whole. He flinches. I don't. Some line inside me that had held fast slips. I slam him into the wall. The sound it makes is the sound of something that won't be fixed with money. The smell, iron, salt, hits the back of the throat with a bright, cruel clarity. He sags. Breath comes thin. Sense blows away like ash. One more time and he is carcass, not man. Silence doesn't return. It changes key. The house shouts its distress at systems designed to respond. I stand over the body and feel a layered emotion I can't name. Satisfaction, shaped like shame. Grief that doesn't know for whom. There is no time to diagnose it. The security team will push through the front in less than a minute. Drones will sow the garden with cameras. Everyone above will practice outrage in the morning. An incendiary device sits on a shelf near the bar because men like Volan love proxies for power. I pull the pin and toss it toward propaganda, bound hollow sheets extol in order, a chair waiting for its owner's imprint. Flame licks, then takes. The house was meant to be seen. Now it will be. I retrace my steps, through citrus and cold, through glass and filtered air, back to the trellis that believes in ivy. The climb hurts more than the first time because the body has begun to settle accounts. My shoulder lays a wet track on the metal. I do not slip. Over the wall, into the canal's breadth, along the water until an access ladder offers the depths again. I look back once. Fire writes an orange argument across the midline's curated evening, a vertical paragraph speaking to anyone who still knows how to read flame. It will be dismissed tomorrow as an unfortunate accident, then repackaged as a lesson about vigilance. But tonight, it says the unsayable, that symbols can burn. I go down. The city changes languages around me. In the narrow dark, a small thing occurs to me like mercy. The anger that had filled every rib now leaves space for something else. Not peace, not yet, but the shape of a plan large enough to deserve the word. The drive in my pocket is heavier with context. Volan was a conduit, not a reservoir. Remove him, and the pressure finds another channel. Zeth is the design. The body negotiates with itself as I walk, claws sliding back and forth with a soft metallic whisper, vision shifting to drink every scrap of available light, the glow under the skin answering the beat of the heart with a steadying counterpulse. None of it feels like control. All of it feels like survival. When I reach the dead maintenance station again, the console is still warm. Lines of text wait where I left them. Purchase orders wearing humanitarian euphemisms, patient logs with names turned to codes, transfer schedules, a column labeled SPA CCESS with a simple, almost shy tag. Tower 14, Sublevel B, Lab Annex, ORISZETH, Director. The world always leaves a trail for the people it thinks untouchable. I lay the map in my head, from depths to midline to spire. I find the seams where maintenance touches privilege, the places where air and water must pass whether you approve or not. I list what I will need and what I will abandon. I test the voice and find it steadier. The buzz of the recessed lights from the slab returns in memory and stops hurting It becomes a reference tone against which to tune the rest. The first chapter of this new life ends with an old act. I fold myself into a corner too small for a person, teach my pulse to slow, and trust my ears to wake me before anything else can. The silver in my veins dims to embers. The machines on the periphery of the depths mutter and grieve. Up above, a house burns like a statement. Process, they called it. Waking, I call it now. If they wanted a weapon, they succeeded. If they wanted ownership, they failed. The depths teach you to move as if every sound is a question you don't want to answer. I leave the maintenance station on a pace that keeps breath quiet and claws sheathed, following the smell of stale current to the service shafts that ladder the city. The map I built from the station's grudging data lives behind my eyes. Midline perimeter grids, sewer trunks that punch through their foundations, a dozen lines of patrol timing with gaps you could slip a prayer through if you believed in that sort of thing. The first hatch is fused shut by a mineral rind. My fingers, too calm, too strong, worry the bolts loose with a patience I didn't know I owned, then peel the plate back and slide into a conduit that forgot the word permit. It's narrow enough that ribs count their blessings. It slopes up toward a brighter hum. Dust coats my tongue with the taste of old concrete and dead wiring. Twice, the metal around me crackles with age. Once a collapsible brace shears and coins a noise across the tunnel that makes my shoulders lock. Nothing comes. I breathe again. Claw tip scratch when I forget to be careful. The sound makes me flinch, as if someone else is following close. The conduit opens into a sewer trunk older than any order stamped on the midline above it. The water is a slow bruise licking the ankles. The biometal under my skin doesn't like the cold. It tightens in threads, contracting like net wire. I tell my hands to unclench. They listen after a beat. Light filters down in 6 squares. Through grates the city pretends are gone. Somewhere up there, a drone whistles to itself because someone told it to be vigilant. I climb by smell. The trunks mix, divide, recombine. The air shifts from metallic rot to the citrus clean the midline buys in bulk. A vertical shaft rises at the place the map says it should. A stack of maintenance rungs bolted into a poured throat of concrete. I go up until the hum turns to discrete voices, vents, traffic, a screen describing a new law in kind tones. My shoulders find an access panel stamped with a serial number nobody has checked in years. It wobbles, then yields. The midline's air is wrong. It wears the same oxygen as the depths, but it has been lectured, filtered, taught to behave. I come up into a maintenance bay where tools hang in ordained rows and a floor drain smells like it never needed to work. The walls are printed with laminated instructions on what to do if something misbehaves. The silence between the words is the part you're supposed to trust. I listen. Footsteps pass and carry on. A cleaning drone makes a soft circuit, clothed in a casing meant to soothe the eye. I step into its blind spot and lift the rag bag from the cart with 2 fingers. Inside is a cloak that will pass if nobody looks long, a roll of fiber tape, a pair of goggles with anti-glare that will hide pupils that refuse to be round. I take them all and leave the drone to its roots. Theft in the midline is a self-serve sin. The city expects you to take what you need so it can catch you later. Streets here perform order. The pavement is a single broad sheet of compliant gray, scribed with luminous lines that change color on cue. Storefronts present curated reflections of sunlight. Every third one sells food that never knew soil. Screens tell stories about the spire, stewardship, security, the quiet benevolence of heights. Drones patrol at polite altitudes until they don't. People move in lanes and learn not to notice. I join the flow under the cloak. The goggles dim the world to a tolerable glare. The glow under my skin answers the rhythm of my steps with a slow pulse. A child glances and her gaze snags on my outline, curious, then slides free because the adult beside her has taught her that sanity means keeping your eyes on the path. Good. The less I exist, the better. Volan's estate lives near a canal that was once about water and is now a rumor about history. The midline bands its waterways with ornamental fences and biodegradable warnings about unsafe currents. Behind them, the liquid moves with a disciplined sluggishness, seeded with algae that someone ordered in rich greens. The wall at Volan's back edge is reinforced steel clad in architectural flattery, louvered panels, planted trellis, a gesture at ivy. He built it for cameras, not for claws. I shadow the perimeter for one full loop of the patrol. Drones cross in a lazy figure 8, 2 beats off rhythm at the far corner. Ground guards pause 5 seconds longer than their route requires to smoke a cigarette in a blind curve. Motion sensors sit in tamper-resistant housings just above ankle height where no owner ever looks. The fiber tape the cleaning drone gifted me will teach one of them to see constant motion in a drip of canal water. I press the strip into place and set a timer in my head. At the next pass, the sensor will murmur activity at perimeter, and the nearest drone will sink to investigate the canal's dangerous ripple. The figure 8 collapses inward to a short, imperfect circle. I climb. The trellis sings under my weight. My fingers find purchase where designers thought aesthetics would substitute for angles. The biometal lays itself along tendons, lending a slow, patient strength as I go up and over. The drop into the garden is shorter than it looks. My knees remember how to receive it. The grass glows like a promise nobody kept. A hidden fan breathes clean into my face and offends my teeth. Inside the wall, the estate is a bouquet of tastes designed by accountants. Perfect flowers invent a season that doesn't exist in this climate. Pathways curve in ways that say, serene. The air is 22 degrees because a program says so. All of it is obscene in a way the depths would never bother to name. You don't need language for the feeling you get watching someone heat the sky. I move houseward under the mild cover of a sculpted tree. The back elevation is glass from hip to ceiling, a pane tuned to show the inside as if it were a lifestyle ad. Marble, leather, a polite arrangement of art, an amber square of drink thrown by a hand that expects to be served. Volan occupies a chair that's already practiced the angle of his back. He's older than the file photos let on, younger than the damage he's bought with other people's lives. He looks exactly like a general who learned how to be glass. The service door knows nice ways to stop you. The latch engages with a hum that pretends to be soft. I hook 2 fingers under the handle, press, and feel the lock pins consider. The biometal in my hand fizzes cold up the wrist as if eager to solve a puzzle. The pins concede. The door opens on a smell like the inside of a medical device, citrus and chill, and the faint outgassing of plastic that will never die. The house carries itself with the arrogance of good design, every line straight, every sight line curated, every corner rounded just enough to avoid accident. Cameras blink in the corners where ceilings meet walls. I angle my head, Keep my face in the shadow of the hood. The claws rub once against my palm as if to remind me they exist. I tell them to behave. He doesn't turn when I step into the room. The glass shows him the city he paid to live above. I smell his drink before I hear the ice ease against the crystal. The hollow glass throws my reflection back, softened and thin. I take 3 quiet steps and stand behind him, in the breath space you keep around a chair when you still believe in manners. "General Volan," I say. He turns as if the chair was slower than he is. The glass floats an inch from his hand, tips, rights itself. His gaze does what all officers' gazes do when noticing becomes a choice. Catalogs first, interprets second, reacts last. He sees the hood, the outline, the posture. Then the hood isn't enough, and he sees the eyes that didn't come back from Tor, the veins that glow where veins should never glow, the claws negotiating loyalty with restraint. The fear that crosses his face is not new. It's the familiarity that makes my teeth ache. "Some of the experiments escaped," he says after a beat, calculated to pass for composure. "I didn't expect you to make it this far." "You expected me to die before or after the trial?" The voice finds itself on the second word. "Why, Tor? Why, Facility P? Why me?" He grins the way you grin at a subordinate who is being precious about civilians. "You think I remembered your name." He sets the glass on an end table with care so that nothing spills, so that at least one thing in the room behaves. "You were a squad in a grid square, KV, a unit, a number in a ledger. Don't personalize doctrine." The anger doesn't rush, it precipitates. Something granular inside me settles into a sharper layer. I take his collar because I have wanted to since the first time I saw his signature under a loss report. I lift because I can, and because the body enjoys the math of it. His feet leave the floor, and he scrabbles at my wrist with nails that have never known honest damage. "Names," I say. "Schedules. The chain from you to Zeth. Which accountants make murder look like a cost center, where Facility P roots its failures." He studies me with an expression that would be admiration if there were any humanity left in him. "You don't understand velocity," he says. "By the time you touch a lever, the machine has already moved past it. Zeth's work is already doctrine. The knife isn't the point. The hand is. The house alarms arrive like a rehearsed choir. 1 tone for window breach, 2 for unauthorized entry, a swelling major key to convince residents something trustworthy is happening." He flinches. I don't. The claws decide they're done being nails. My hand closes because I forget not to let it. His breath thins. The chair's angle stares up at me in a tilt I suddenly loathe. I slam him into the wall because the wall has been waiting for honesty. The sound it makes is an ugly, wet, final thing. He slides with a streak I smell before I see. The rage that had found a clean edge floods briefly across its own border. I take a step back that I don't remember deciding to take. He still has words. It's a talent. "You'll die here," he manages, jaw loose, eyes sliding unfocused toward the ceiling where screens are starting to pulse with instructions. "Even if you kill me, Zeth." The part of me that wanted answers knows I have enough. The part that wanted something else is larger. I bring him down again. This time, the wall gives a little. He stops being a man and becomes evidence. There's a moment while the alarms scale upward and the world fills with a compound smell, blood iron folded into ozone into hot plastic, when I feel nothing at all. Then the body shakes once, not remorse. Reset. Security will arrive from the front, fast and loud. Drones will bite at the garden, and curtains of responders will drape the block in reason. I don't have time to go hunting through his files. I already stole his calendar and his access map when the drive told me he kept them. I do have time to leave a sentence the midline will understand. The incendiary sits on a shelf with the rest of the curated life, a display model with real teeth, a safety pin meant to be admired. I palm it, pull, toss. Flame begins with etiquette, a clear tongue licking the corner of a propaganda hollow. Then it remembers appetite. The hollows curl and peel in digital death. The chair finally reclines to a posture Volan will never occupy again. I move back through the house. The cameras watch and tell themselves they will be listened to. The service door pushes against my palm like a dog eager for walk. The garden air meets me, sweet with filtration and beginning smoke. I cross the absurd lawn and climb the trellis slower than before because the body has messages for me, and all of them are pain. Over the wall, into the canal's breath. The tape on the sensor has done its petty work. A drone hovers, staring down at manufactured ripples, dutiful and misled. Behind me, fire learns the house. Windows pop like small opinions. The sky above the block shifts to an orange seldom permitted here. People on the walking lane stop, then teach themselves not to gather. The midline produces officials to narrate the flames into acceptability. I am already under the fence and down a maintenance ladder that no one has cared for since the city's last honest flood. The depths receive me with the relieved exhale of a space that never had to lie about what it is. The glow under my skin dims, then surges bright for a few pulses as the biometal pours a chemical ache through my veins. My hands flex on their own. The claws slide, retract, click. I press them flat to my thighs and walk until the water's bruise is a memory and the console room's hum is the only rhythm that matters. The maintenance station remembers me. The screen still shows the last page I left open, Volan's security staff, redacted names that aren't redacted enough, a cluster of icons labeled Access SP. I scroll with a finger that wants to become a blade and won't let it. Tower 14, Sublevel B, Lab Annex. Oris Zeth, Director. The corridors tighten on the map into a precision the depths would mock. Biometric gates, pressure floors, external patrols measured in meters and seconds. It is a design that believes in itself. I teach the map to live behind my eyes. The route won't touch the front entrances. It will ride water and air and refuse. It will cut through service spines where the city can't afford to be glamorous. I make a list. What I will need to pry open their doors without begging. What I will do with my body when it fails me at the wrong moment. How to make a noise look like silence. Pain arrives in waves now, timed to nothing I can predict. The biometal has learned too much from adrenaline. It expands where it shouldn't, tightens where it should bend, complains when I demand fine work from gross tools. My vision slides toward the spectrum that privileges threat. Everything else dims. I am angrier at that than at the pain. Anger is a clean flame if you keep it smaller than the room. I intend to. I don't sleep so much as I truce with the dark. I wedge myself between the cabinet and the console, feet set against the base frame so nothing can remove me without my say. The city mutters its endless complaint along the pipes. Somewhere above, the midline performs sorrow for a camera, then drafts a memo. The spire throws a line of pale light into the low cloud like a lighthouse that never saved anyone. Volan is done. The route first passed through him because he stood between me and the knife. The hand that held the knife still waits. Oris Zeth likes control enough to carve it into other people. He writes his name where only he expects to read it. He left it where I could find it. The midline knots itself around the spire like a polite threat. I have my fingers on one loop and I'm pulling. The spire isn't tall so much as inevitable. From the depths, it looks like a verdict written in glass, a needle threading through weather that never asked to be pierced. Maps call it Tower 14, a clean numeral you can print on diagrams and budgets. Up close, at the base where the city feeds its hungers, it's ductwork and sump pumps and 1,000 small mouths, swallowing all the places the midline refuses to see. I reach it by moving through the city's unchosen organs, water, air, refuse, touching the seams where maintenance kisses privilege. The route I taught myself in the glow of a dying console unfolds without surprises, along a trench of braided cable, up a ladder that left its paint on my palms, through a panel no one has signed for in 10 years because signatures are for people who think scrutiny is for other people. Every door that should resist gives in with a tired click. The biometal under my skin thrums at each little defeat like a cat finding a heartbeat. Pressure floors begin where the corridor paint shifts from utility gray to white that has never met dirt. Cameras bloom like winter fruit. A polite voice in the vents congratulates employees for their excellence. I slow. The claws threaten to declare a private emergency and slide free. I make them listen. I step where weight belongs. The joints of plates, the templates of old footprints, the blemish in the tile where a repair crew left a rumor. The goggles I stole from a midline drone hide the eyes I didn't choose. Their anti-glare throws the world into a manageable hushing blue. 2 guards talk without speaking outside the annex door. Boot twitches, weapon angles, boredom calibrated to vigilance. Their breath steams even in this curated climate. I let them see nothing at all and then too much, appearing between heartbeats the way a stain appears on paper when you pour truth into it. The first goes down because his skull meets the wall at a speed the wall doesn't like. The second raises the barrel just enough to tell me where to push. The rifle claps the tile. My claws put the weapon out of its argument. We have an understanding. I will not kill them if I don't have to, because death won't teach me what I came for. The biometric panel reads my presence with a confusion so pure it becomes cooperation. My palm hits the seam, and the biometal floods the hand with cold that bites and enlightens. The scanner translates the surge as authorized complexity, shrugs, unlocks. The door inhales. Inside the annex, it is midnight. At noon, light rises from consoles like a tide of syntax. A ring of tanks looms in the not dark, each full of something that pretends not to have a name. Tubes web the ceiling. The air tastes of sterile ocean and intention. I hear the room before I see it. The low, layered throb of machines doing exactly what they were paid to do. On the far wall, a screen idles in waiting mode. When I approach, it blooms as if it knows me. It displays gene maps like star charts and procurement chains like family trees, boxes labeled compliance. A file name stamped Oris Zeth eats most of the top row like a winter sun. KV-72. He says my designation the way you say a password to a door that has never locked you out. Zeth steps from a side chamber with a surgeon's poise and a salesman's eyes. He is lean where power is usually padded. His suit is the color languages use when they want to pretend they aren't wearing anything at all. He looks not pleased exactly, but complete. A man who has been waiting for this conversation so long, he's already practiced leaving it. "You found your way," he says. "Good. It means the instincts held my instincts were mine before you learned to monetize them. My voice sounds like gravel, sifted for usable stones. Turn off the toys." He tilts his head. For a heartbeat, he looks like a teacher, flattered by a student's rage. Then he touches a panel, and the room answers him like muscle answers brain. Alarms choke down to a hum. A chamber at the far curve of the wall releases a ribbon of white vapor, the kind that makes films of miracles and nightmares. He stops far enough away to make me choose whether to close. He really is good at control. "You were ideal," he says. "Discipline, endurance, loyalty, the scaffolding of a reliable self. We built on what you already were and removed what you couldn't afford." I couldn't afford? The laugh rises inside and finds barbs on the way out. "You removed my name." He shrugs, not indifference, not apology, precision. Names are inefficient. Numbers scale. I move because that's what the anger wanted from the first moment under recessed lights. He expects the slash and gets it because sometimes the animal deserves the straight line. But he also expected the speed, and he has rehearsed this room more times than I have walked any room lately. He steps aside, glancing my shoulder with the kind of grace that gets labeled elegant when it kills politely. His fingers find a recessed switch and press. The tanks hiss as if they've been holding their breath and were promised air. Glass fogs, cracks of fine lace. The first of them gives. Bodies that are mostly almost people spill into the room. They are keen, wrong, relentless. Angles like mine, but harsher, the metal pushed closer to the surface. The eyes lit to a frequency that ignores mercy. A voice that isn't a voice inside me says, "Prototype," and it is not a compliment. They lunge with textbook efficiency and no memory of fear. I meet them at close quarters because you can't reason with a design until you've broken it into parts, then shown it what the parts did to each other. Claw through cable, shoulder into joint, knee against hinge. Their movements are too smooth. Balance made idiot perfect by algorithms doesn't know how to fail well. When the first falls, it goes down like a machine losing power, instant, graceless, complete. The second learns the wall. The third, the floor. The fourth makes a sound that might be a human syllable, and I hate Zeth for that even more than for everything else. Pain arrives in the middle of the brawl with Zeth's favorite punctuality. The biometal surges up my forearms and across my chest, an unrolled river of heat that turns the next punch into a sentence with the wrong verb tense. The claws click in and out without my permission. My vision collapses to a tunnel so narrow the world becomes task, target, breath. When silence returns, it comes on knees. Shards of tank glass catch blue light and/or blood. I step, and the crunch empties the room of everything but the math of it. Zeth is gone. A door at the far side of the annex exhales a satisfied sigh that says it was useful again. He didn't flee. He proceeded the way processes do. I follow. The spire is a set of repetitions until the floor becomes carpet and the walls become art. Security tries 3 times and learns 3 times that doctrine is not a shield against an enemy who won't behave. I let one team live because their eyes look newer than their rifles, and because I want someone later to remember that mercy wasn't just a rumor in the depths. I bleed in lines that my clothes won't hide for long, but the biometal has learned triage and squeezes shut what I would have sealed with my teeth in a trench. On the upper levels, the air tastes like expensive water and punctuation. People in suits leap backward from my shadow. Their hands perform the old dance, open, pleading, bargaining, the one that says, "I will make this a problem for someone else if you let me pass." I have no time for their reflexes, but I don't need to kill them to make the point. A glance is a weapon if you know where to aim it. The doors to the top room pretend to be a wall. They like to exist. I oblige them by letting them break spectacularly. Steel groans, glass flakes. The conference chamber reveals itself like a stage blessed and cursed by perfect light. A long table so polished it forgets to reflect people. 9 faces that appear on magazine covers you by and checkout lines. At the far end, Zeth, hands loose at his sides, posture cut from script. He planned this too, or at least the shape of it. He wanted an audience. He gets one. I don't give a speech. Words don't belong to me the way they used to. The throat has been rebuilt to carry different cargo. I take 3 steps and the table fails the way facade should, cleaving with a sound like a promise kept. The elites scatter correctly, showing me their training. Nearest exit, head down, keep the spine intact. Someone sobs. Someone prays to a version of God that likes donors. I move through them like weather, not because I want them dead. Desire is flatter than that now, but because their lives built the room and rooms like it, and there has to be a cost you can feel in your shoes. Zeth uses the moment to edge toward a side door. He was always going to. I am faster than my pain wants me to be. The hand that finds his collarbone trembles. The grip that closes around his throat does not. "You didn't make me," I tell him. He can't answer. His mouth works like a fish surprised to find water unhelpful. "You broke me." Different verbs. His heel glances the wall. He tags a panel. Something in the floor hums with the self-satisfaction of redundancy. I don't let him show me the last card. I throw him not out of fury, fury would have me tear, but out of a calmer arithmetic that says you remove this piece and watch the engine stutter. He hits the wall, he slides. His eyes climb up to mine and fail. I kneel because I want him to see the face he edited for performance. He finds a thread of voice. "You will fail," he manages, and it is almost tender the way a parent refuses a child a story. The hand, I know where the hand is, I say. It's attached to people hiding behind words like stability and order. They run at fire. They sign for shipments and call it maintenance. They built this. They signed you. They will learn to be afraid of the bottom of their own house. I end him, quick, not as mercy, though he would appreciate it labeled that way, as refusal to let him narrate the next moment. The building, robbed of its favorite supervisor, remembers that it is full of flammable decisions. Explosions begin in the places I ran too fast to study. Power couplings that learned stress, fuel lines the last crew deferred. Fire loves a sermon. It stands on the lower floors and preaches upward. Smoke swallows expensive light. My body, which had been waiting for me to give up, seizes its opportunity. The biometal floods hot, the kind of heat that turns the edges of thought to melted glass. The claws retract, extend, stutter. A metronome with a cracked spring. Sounds stack. Alarms layered with screams, layered with the low, wet roar of oxygen losing arguments. I step back into the conference chamber. The long table has become a geography of splinters. The elites are scattered like dropped chess. A woman in a silver suit is trying sincerely to drag a man in a charcoal suit toward an exit that thinks now is a good time to reconsider its duties. I do not think about the midline garden where I taught a wall to tell the truth. I think about a maintenance station in the depths and a glowing line of text that said SPACCESS, Tower 14, Sublevel B, Annex. I think about the children of the men at this table and the lies they will be offered tomorrow. I think about the first strap that failed on the slab and the idea that leapt into my hands with the freedom. I make one small decision that feels larger than any I've made today. I wedge a shattered chair under a buckling door and slam my shoulder into the frame until the gap becomes path. 3 people, a woman with blood on her shoes, a boy too young for this room, a man who looks like he hates his own tie, stagger through. None of them thanks me. Good. Let them live long enough to understand what the favor cost. I can't follow. The floor goes tired in waves, and my knees finally accept gravity as a friend. The fire finds the conference room's taste expensive and eats with attention. I kneel in heat that makes the biometal sing and think about names. Mine, the ones I killed, the ones I couldn't save, the ones printed on memos where death got itemized into units and lessons learned. There's a hatch behind a moving wall of heat. Service, the kind of exit meant for the unphotographed. I could reach it if the body would do one more impossible thing. The body has given me a list of impossible things tonight. It wants to renegotiate. The claws slide back with a soft, exhausted click. I smile at the sound because it's almost human. Before I go under, I do one last useful violence. I drag Zeth's hand across the table to his console. The skin shocks, the panel wakes. The network says hello to the highest clearance in the room. I pull the drive from my pocket, the one I took from Facility P and fattened with Volan schedules and 100 small proofs that turn rumor into prosecution. With what's left of my fingers, I write a message into the city. Not a manifesto. I don't have the throat for that. A data burst, dumb and loud, and everywhere the spire's veins will carry it. Logs, signatures, footage, the supply lines from depths to doctrine. I aim it not at law, which will curate and redact and pat me on the head for my passion, but at maintenance networks and undercity exchanges and the private chats of midline workers who still look up when a siren sounds. I put it on repeat. I tell the system to send until nothing listens or everything does. The console winks compliance. Somewhere below, a dozen screens in rooms like the one that woke me become mirrors none of their owners wanted. Somewhere above, a child sees a headline his parents can't explain away without cracking. The floor breathes out. I breathe with it. Heat climbs into my mouth and makes a home. The world narrows until it is mostly light and a single sound like water under stone. I think of my squad on tour, of the man who always hummed the wrong melody, of the woman who could sight a target by smell, of the kid who wrote letters he never sent because he didn't know where to put the address. I think of the chair I braced against a door in a house I hated, and of the small human fact that even monsters get to choose a useful action now and then. If this is where I end, it is not where the story ends. The depths don't stop at my breath. The midline's neat lines fail when you rub ash into them. The spire will grow a new glass body because that is what it knows how to do. But glass remembers fire. It warps under hands. It rings differently when you tap it. It carries a shadow of heat. I put my forehead to the warm floor and feel the building's pulse fighting the fire's logic. Somewhere, a hatch groans in a voice that sounds like invitation. My body argues. My body loses. The light becomes a softer thing, almost human in its persistence. Before the dark arrives, something changes in the air. Cooler wind against a cheek that had forgotten the word. The sound of metal pried by hands that don't give up easily. A silhouette in the smoke, small, deliberate, unafraid. The posture of someone who learned to live where maps won't admit living happens. KV, a voice says, low, as if sound itself might trigger alarms. No designation. A name I used to carry. On your feet. I don't know if I rise. I don't know if the hands reach me, or if the hatch that groaned was mercy, or if I simply burn, and the message burns longer. It doesn't matter which truth is true right now. Not for the reader I imagine might be standing in a midline shop with a screen open to a file they were never meant to see. Not for the worker in the depths whose console suddenly shows memos with red stamps. Not for the drone pilot who pauses the patrol path and reads what the camera sent him because the words look like a dare. The spire breaks. It remembers how. The city inhales, and below the smoke line, where firelight turns steel to river, the hunt, the real one, ours, not theirs, begins.